Welcome to Drum LCK. My name is John, and today we're going to talk about how to set up your hi-hat stand and how to fix any problems you might run into. Let's go. First, let's take a look at this PDP lightweight stand. I chose this one because it's one of the most common ones I see at students' houses, and it's also one of the cheaper ones on Amazon that still gets the job done. First, let's take a look at the hi-hat clutch. The hi-hat clutch is the single most misunderstood piece of gear on the drum set. So I have two clutches here to check out. The one on the left came from the DW9000 stand. That's a very advanced and expensive stand. And the one on the right is the one that came with this PDP stand. There's not much difference between the two. The DW one on the left is a little heavier, a little bulkier, and it has a lock on the bottom nut to make sure it doesn't fall off. The one on the right is just a cheaper version. So let's take a look at the DW here. And we have our wing nut on the top. This is how you tighten the clutch onto the rod of the hi-hat. You have your two washers here. This is how you adjust the tightness of your top hat. You have a felt for the top and a felt for the bottom of the hi-hat cymbal. And then your locking nut here at the bottom. This one, as I mentioned earlier, has a lock so it doesn't come loose like this as you're playing. So connecting your hi-hat to this clutch is super simple, and it's the thing that everybody gets wrong. We're just going to take off the bottom nut here. We're going to take off one felt. Before we move forward, I'd like to mention that the upgraded hi-hat clutches also have a lot of times this smooth section here, and you want to make sure your cymbal lines up there, because you can do some damage to the cymbal if it's in the grooves here. The cheaper clutch is pretty much grooves all the way through. So once you're at this point, you just got to attach your top hi-hat cymbal. If your hi-hat cymbals aren't labeled, just take the lighter one. Whichever one's heaviest should be the bottom hi-hat cymbal. We're going to hold the clutch upside down, place our top hat on there just like this. We're going to place one felt and then place our locking nut on the bottom. At this point, you can tighten this if you'd like. If not, it's cool. We're going to turn that back over. Now, you want a little bit of wiggle in your top hat here. You definitely do not want to tighten it all the way down. You risk cracking the bell of your cymbal that way. Washer here actually is just like a locking mechanism, so it stays where you want it. Next, let's take a look at the actual stand itself. And then when we're done that, we're going to take a look at how to fix common problems in your hi-hat stand. So I took this apart exactly how it came in the box. You have your connecting rod, the top tube, this is what actually holds the bottom hi-hat cymbal, and then your bass that actually has the pedal to the stand. First thing you want to do is set up the bass here. So we're just going to unfold that. You can see the bottom pedal's connected to the stand by this chain here. It's not going to go anywhere. Don't be afraid. A lot of these cheaper stands, just like this, have this type of mechanism on the bottom where you just got to put these hooks into the holes here. And once you're set up there, pedal's not going anywhere. You just want to flatten the bass, loosen the wing nut here, and which will let you lower the 3 legs or 2 legs if you have that kind of stand. All right. You just want to kind of press down here a little bit, make sure it's flat, make sure the bass is touching as well. And there you go. The bass is set up. All right. The next step is to connect the connecting rod to the bass. So when you look inside the tube here, there's going to be a rod here that you can connect this rod right into. There you go. You don't need to use all your force, but you do want to make sure it's nice and tight. Next, we're just going to slide the upper tube that holds the bottom hat right over top of the connecting rod. Make sure this wing nut is loose so you can actually slide it on there. Tighten it up to whatever height you like. And there you go. Your hi-hat stand is put together. Now that we're back at the kit, we're going to take a look at this DW9000 stand, and this part of the stand is pretty much the same across the board. You have this little basket here. I don't know what it's actually called. I'm just going to call it a basket. You typically have one solid washer, and then you have one felt that goes on top of the washer. Remember, metal should never touch your cymbals. Now that we have our felt down, we can go ahead and take our bottom hi-hat and place it on the hi-hat stand like that. Now that our bottom hat's set, you can take a look below it and see this little wing nut right here. Some hi-hat stands, it's a knob that you turn. They're all a little different here, but they all do the same thing. And what it does is tilt your bottom cymbal. The more you tighten it, the more the cymbal will tilt. And we'll get to why that's important here as soon as we add the top hat. All right, now adding the top hat, Our clutch is already secured. You're just going to place it over the rod. Make sure the wing nut is loose enough. There you go. Once the cymbal's in place, before you tighten the wing nut, you should be able to move the hi-hat pedal up and down freely, and the rod right here should follow, just like this. Now we're going to set our clutch by just placing a little pressure on the pedal like this and tightening our wing nut. Now, the amount of space between your cymbals is different for everybody. You can go higher or lower. It's all personal preference. I like to make sure it's at a spot where you can still get a nice sound when you play the hi-hat with your foot, and it opens enough to get a nice hi-hat bark. So going back to the tilt option below here, if the cymbals, I'm going to flatten it out. If the cymbals are completely flat, when you step on the hat, it can kind of mute itself. Like that, you're not getting a really good sound out of it. If I tighten the wing nut a little bit, which again tilts the bottom cymbal, you're going to get a much better sound out of your left foot. 3 or 4 times louder than if the bottom hat is flat. It's also really important if you end up doing like heel toe stuff on your hi-hat to get those hi-hat splashes like this. It's very hard to get a good sound like that when your bottom hat is flat. Now, when you're thinking about how high or low your hi-hat should be, again, it's another thing that's just personal preference, but you got to think if it's too high, you're not going to be able to use the tip of your stick because you'll have to play it like this, right? You'll be using mostly the shaft here. And if it's too low, you'll be using mostly tip, and you won't be able to get a nice fat sound out of the shaft of the stick. So a nice middle ground is the best way to go so you can utilize every part of the hi-hat. And, you know, it's really about just making sure you're comfortable while you're playing. So that's pretty much how you set up your hi-hat the right way. Next, we're going to grab the camera, we're going to get a closer look, and we're going to talk about ways to troubleshoot common problems with the hi-hat stand. All right, so the first issue I want to talk about is something I see a lot when I go to students' houses, and typically they come to me and say, my hi-hat stand is broken, I need to get a new one. It's almost never broken. It's always one of these simple things to fix. So again, the first one is what happens over time. Sometimes kids will sit here and spin their cymbals. And eventually what happens is this rod gets detached from the post in the center of the tube there. You go to push down on the pedal and nothing happens. You go to lift up on this and the whole rod is just completely detached. Simple fix, takes less than a minute. All you got to do is first loosen the clutch, take the top cymbal off, take the bottom cymbal off. We're going to loosen the center wing nut here just to take this entire tube off, just like this. And you can see this is no longer attached. All we got to do is tighten it here. Place our tube back on. Place our bottom cymbal, our top cymbal. Set your clutch, and you're good. Now, the second issue I want to talk about is something that happens with the clutch. This happens to everybody and every clutch, unless you have that locking mechanism on the bottom. If your hi-hat clutch looks like this, right here, it's still attached to the rod here, but your bottom nut and felt are no longer there. Now, to fix this, all you got to do is undo your clutch, lift your top cymbal, place it back on the clutch like that, and reset your felt and the end nut here. Now, over time, these just get loose. It's just the better your clutch, the less it's going to happen. But with these cheaper clutches, it's going to happen fairly often. Just set your clutch and you're good. And that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. It really means the world to me. Let me know if you like this and if you want me to kind of walk you through any other types of gear, maybe a bass drum pedal or something like that. Make sure you remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, take care. We're going to take this whole tube off here. Oh boy.